All right.
Lady Johnson said to me, I said, what do I do with this ticket? She said, it says, keep this coupon. They never told me what they were going to draw it, so he said, doesn't happen. I asked him the other night, what do you think? This.
We know that these words, so we don't get me to pay for anyone else's. You don't carry no one. You do it's the same. My passport and one credit card. Your account. All the time.
Well, I get that last time.
It is.
If everyone will check in to make sure that you have your blue voting slip today, we'll get started in a few minutes, please.
Well, we come back and it's right first of all, so take the lane to the
All right, folks, if I could bring this meeting to order, please. Welcome to the town of Milton annual Meeting first session of 2019 warrant articles for the state of New Hampshire. I'd ask that you all rise and join me for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I do this every year, and I ask for a moment of silence to honor the department. I think it's respectful to recognize those in town who have served us for years and have passed on. Notably, Dennis Wynn. Dennis was a frequent attendee to this meeting, always an earnest participant. Dave Auber, resident of Milton Mills. Russell Ellis Sr., former Selectman Joan Ball passed away this past year, and Brady Brown. I'd ask that you please set all your cell phones to a silent mode. If you must take a call, please exit the room to complete your call. I even have to do that with my own phone. I've been asked by the Tom is running the audio system today. We are video recording this meeting, possibly for retransmission over the local cable channel. There's a number of cables along the perimeter and like behind me, and he'd ask that you please not watch those cables so you don't get tripped up and disconnected or ruin the equipment. There is no smoking allowed within the building. Remember, it is a school property. They probably have a rule to leave smoking on campus. You're right. I've been reminded of one other important individual who passed away. It was a lengthy list. Bob Hodges, founder of Milton Hardware, and also very big on community participation. Bob was a frequent attendee of this meeting, and I don't think he ever missed a vote. So, thank you for reminding me of that. Bathrooms, if anyone needs them, men's and ladies' rooms, out those doors to the right. I checked them out earlier. They look clean too. Thanks. Introducing people. My name is Chris Jacobs. I am the moderator for the Board of Selectmen. Mr. Ryan Tebow, he's the Selectman Chairman. Aaron Hutchins, Selectman, and Mr. Andy Boucher. Our town administrators are Heather Thibodeau and David Owens. David, what are you doing? Dave is our temporary filling town administrator. Heather is moving on to higher and greener pastures. Is that how we say it? Our town clerk is Ms. Michelle Beauchamp, on the left. Legal counsel is Mr. Walter Mitchell, sitting next to Heather towards the end of the table. Budget committee members. Mr. Robert P. Carrier is our chairman. Mr. Thomas McDougall is our vice chairman. Aaron Hutchins is the selectman's representative to that committee. Peg Hurd, school board representative. Your water district representative is Justin Bellow. And Mark Currier, Timmy Smith, David Carpus, and Larry Brown to round out the rest of the committee. Supervisors of the checklist at the table, Karen Brown and Brittany Leach. Again, if you don't have your blue card to vote, you need to see them to get one. There will be a candidates forum for all candidates running for the school district and town offices on Sunday, February 24th, 2019, in the Selectmen's meeting room, beginning at 6 p.m. It's always been a, well, I know the last turnout was really good, and it's a good back and forth between the candidates and the public to see where they stand, what their goals are, etc., and put a name to a face. Our delivery session rules today. We are under the provisions of SB2, so that stands for Senate Bill 2. There is no final vote on the items discussed today until March 12, 2019. We'd ask that you bring your driver's license or other valid form of identification on that day to check in with the election officials. It would be the same people, Karen Brown and Brittany. All questions today are please directed through myself, the moderator. As moderator, I will not vote except to make or break a tie. To vote today, you need to check in at the supervisor's checklist table and raise your colored ballot to be counted. Please be courteous to all present, speak to the warrant, or you will be ruled on the warrant. If you wish to speak, please state your name. You must use the microphone here or the microphone at this podium so that you can be heard by all present. By the way, Ken, is it too loud, too soft? Anyone? Perfect, okay. Each speaker may only speak once until after everyone else has spoken. Please be brief. I will not recognize a motion to move a question when it is clear that others wish to speak. The motion will only be recognized when everyone who wishes to speak has done so at least once. There are a couple of zoning articles that are on the ballot today to be discussed. I cannot accept a motion to alter those zoning articles. They've been through a process of planning board public hearings, just general hearings of their own. If they wanted or could have been modified, they should have been modified in that process. By state law, when they reach this level, they cannot be modified. I say that, and every year it says, well, that word really should be in instead of at. I suppose if it doesn't substantially change it, yeah, we'll go with the English name, change it. But I cannot, you cannot like delete whole words, add sentences in, things of that nature. They cannot be substantially changed. After a period of discussion and answer to questions, the warrant will be open to amendments. All amendments must be in writing. And I understand today that there's a number of amendments being considered. There will be no amendments to amendments, meaning that only one at a time. I won't allow us to get 3 or 4 deep on amendments. Then we never know really what we're voting. After all persons present have had an opportunity to speak to the article, I will recognize a motion to close the warrant article for discussion. Recognize a second to that motion. If the warrant article has been amended, I will read the warrant article in full with any approval that is before the vote. At this time, I will accept a motion to vote by secret ballot. The motion must be signed by no less than 5 registered voters, and they have been previously verified as registered by the supervisors of the checkers. The reason why I want to do it now is if you intend to vote using those ballot boxes, because it takes her several minutes to go down to the checklist. If any of you intend to do that, you need to, or I would like you to submit the request now, just so that she has the time to verify the number of voters. If we don't have a motion for secret ballot, I'm going to use, we will strictly rely on these colored handouts. After the vote, I'll instruct the clerk to place the warrant article on the second session ballot as read. Again, under SB 2, no final votes will be taken until March 12, 2019. Hear that phone going off? That's the moderator. Failed to silence his cell phone. You may wish to limit reconsideration under RSA 40:10. You can move to restrict reconsideration. This will only limit further reconsideration for today only. The reason why we do that is, or the reason why the whole rule was adopted is, people used to vote, let's say, the main articles, school's operating budget, the town's operating budget. Half the people would leave the room thinking it was all done, and other people would bring the motion back to the floor and either add or delete money from the article. So with each and every article, we go through the process to limit reconsideration, so that if you did leave the room or had to go home for whatever reason, you can rest assured that that vote that we took stands. But restricting reconsideration can only postpone a second vote to a reconvened meeting held at least 7 days from now. The process does allow that a week from today, painfully, we can take another Saturday. If you move to restrict reconsideration, you do not bring it back to the floor today, even if it's for a good reason, such as a math error. That has happened in the past where someone, let's say, wanted to strip $100,000 out of a certain budget, stripped it, a new dollar line got read, and guess what, there was a map there. You can't go back. So, when we restrict reconsideration, understand you're done for the day. Are there any questions about those rules? I am the moderator, and while I run the meeting, I can be overruled on a point of order at any time by a majority vote. That has happened. I am not embarrassed when it happens. It shows that you're actually paying attention, and it is your meeting. Before I read the first article, I first need to bring to the voters' attention that we have a number of persons in the room who are not eligible to vote, but may wish to speak to one or more articles. Those persons are Mr. Walter Mitchell, our attorney, David Owens, temporary town administrator, Heather Thibodeau, current town administrator, and Kathy Wallingford, who works at the town hall. Oh, and you. I'll accept the motion to allow those people to speak. Michelle moves the motion. Is there a second? Second. Mr. Larry Brown. All those in favor of allowing those persons just identified to speak, please raise your ballot. Anyone opposed to that? The motion passes unopposed. Yes, sir.
Taxpayers who are not voting for it.
Same thing. You would need to be recognized to vote. Two, you would need to be recognized to speak. You want to be recognized at this point, or do you want to wait till
I would like to be recognized.
your name, sir, for the record? Your name is for the record?
Bridges?
Pat Bridges?
Frank.
Fred Bridges?
Frank.
Frank? Any middle name you want to? Frank? All three of them. Frank, Joe Bridges, or even all those in favor of allowing, I'll make a motion to allow Mr. Bridges to speak. Seconded by Michelle, seconded by Mr. Brown. All those in favor, please raise your ballots. Anyone opposed? You can speak. Thank you. Thank you for identifying yourself. We move on to the warrant articles. The inhabitants of the school district, town of Milton, New Hampshire, qualified to vote in district affairs. This is school district. Town district. You are hereby notified of the annual meeting schedule. First session, the deliberative session, the annual town meeting held today, beginning at 9 a.m. at the new high school. First session will consist of explanation, discussion, and debate of each of the following warrant articles, and will also afford voters who are present the opportunity to propose, debate, adopt amendments to warrant articles, except those articles whose wording is prescribed under state law. The second session of the annual town meeting will be to elect town officers by official ballot, to vote on the warrant articles as they may have been amended at the first session, which will be held on Tuesday, March 12, 2019. And I'm adding this in the community room of the Milton Assembly of God Church at 370 White Mountain Highway. I added that wording. I didn't want people to think that we were voting between the pews. Polls for voting by official ballot will open at 8 a.m. and close at 7 p.m. The election of officers, you have, I'm just going to read the openings. Board of Selectmen, one person for 3 years. Budget Committee, one person 1 year. 2 people for 3 years. Cemetery Trustee, one person for 3 years. Fire Chief, one person for 3 years. Library Trustee, one person for 3 years. Planning Board, 2 positions for 3-year terms. Town Clerk, 1 position for 3 years. Treasurer, 1 position for 1 year. Trustee of Trust Funds, 1 position for 3 years. And Zoning Board of Adjustment, 2 positions for 3 years. I will instruct the clerk to place warrant article 1 on the second session ballot as read. Article 2. Are you in favor of the adoption of amendment number 1 as proposed by the Milton Planning Board for the town zoning ordinance as follows? To update the official zoning map of the town of Milton to add a 52.4 acre lot known as map 45, parcel 23, located on New Hampshire Route 75 and currently zoned low density residential to the existing industrial commercial zoning district that straddles New Hampshire Route 75 between the Spalding Turnpike and New Hampshire Route 125, thereby enlarging said zoning district by 52.4 acres. Copies of the map depicting the proposed zoning district enlargement are available for review at the town office and will be available the day of the election. Majority vote is required for this particular article. It's been recommended by the planning board 7-0 and recommended by the board of selectmen 3-0. Motion made to open Article 2 for discussion by Brian Keogh and seconded by Andy Wisher. All those in favor of the motion to open the article for discussion, please raise your ballots. Opposed? It is open for discussion. The moderator recognizes Ryan to speak to the article.
This initiative has been proposed because the land use and economic development chapter of the Milton Master Plan recommends expanding the industrial commercial zoning district that straddles New Hampshire routes 75 and areas at 17 which falls within. In addition, a 2013 economic development strategic plan prepared by the Milton Economic Development Committee specifically advocates development of this area because of its proximity to three-phase power, its railroad access, upland nature, and ability to access both the state highway and the turnpike without having to traverse local roads. Additionally, any development would remain screened from abutting residential neighborhoods in the area heavily wooded nature. The map depicting the proposed change in boundaries of the commercial industrial zone district is shown.
Questions?
Karen's saying she can't hear stuff. No questions?
Again, any questions regarding this article? I do have one, because I'm not aware of the process at all, and I'll ask Bruce to answer. I thought this article, this particular parcel was going to go to conservation, or am I mistaken, different parcel?
I can say it really quickly, you're mistaken on that one, it really,
I'm
that was
mistaken.
slated for conservation.
It what?
Was not.
It was not slated for conservation. All right. Did everyone understand the question and the answer? There was. Any amendments to this particular article? Not seeing any, I'll take a motion to close Article 2 for discussion. Made by Tom Gray, seconded by Andy Rossi. All those in favor of the motion to close reconsideration of this article, please raise your ballot. Anyone opposed to that? Not seeing any, the motion passes. I instruct the clerk to place warrant Article 2 on the second session ballot as read. Article 3. I thought that's where did I close discussion? How did I do? They're correcting me that the motion was to close discussion. So is there a motion to close reconsideration of Article 2? Mr. Brown, second by Mr. Gray. All those in favor of closing Article 2 for further reconsideration, say. Thank you. Not seeing any opposition, the motion passes. Moving on to Article 3. Are you in favor of the adoption of Amendment Number 2 as proposed by the Milton Planning Board for the town zoning ordinance as follows? To amend Article 2 definitions to add and modify definitions of special exception uses which have previously not been denied or modified, to define specific parameters of such uses and to modify the definition of special exception to clarify that such uses must meet both general and specific criteria. To amend Article 3, Section 3.5, Table of Principal and Accessory Uses in zoning districts, to modify said table to change a number of special exception uses to uses permitted by right, change the number of permitted uses to special exception uses, and to change the number of not permitted uses to either permitted or special exception uses. In addition, to modify the table to add 2 new uses, alternative energy producers/providers as a special exception in all zones, and the new use agritourism as permitted use in all zones to follow state statute. To amend Article 8, Zoning Board of Adjustment, Section 1A, special exceptions, by clarifying the requirements for approval and by modifying the general conditions required for approval to be in line with state guidelines for such conditions, and to add language requiring that specific criteria be met if included in the ordinance. To amend Article 8, Zoning Board of Adjustment, by adding a use Section 3, specific criteria for certain special exception uses, which adds specific criteria requirements for 13 special exception uses. Copies of the completed text of Amendment Number 2 are available for review at the town office and will be available the day of the election. Were there any on the back table?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. This is an article that requires a majority vote. It has been recommended by the Planning Board 7-0. It is recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0. Motion made to open Article 3 for discussion by Ryan, seconded by Andy Rosser. All those in favor of the motion to open this article for discussion, please raise your ballots. Those opposed? It passes. Article 3 is open to discussion. The moderator recognizes Selectman Ryan Tebow to speak to the article.
This initiative began with the planning board recognizing that some special exception uses made little sense, such as any proposed retail use in the commercial residential zone needing a special exception approval from the zoning board of adjustment to start the retail business. This is one of the changes made with the amendment, which also includes a comprehensive review of all special exceptions contained in the table of principal and accessory uses in the zoning districts to determine what the reasoning was for giving them special exceptions. The board determined that the authors of the original zoning ordinance use a category for any use that they didn't understand, therefore the planning board took a fresh look at those determinations and proposed positive changes that do 2 main things. First, the proposed changes aim to simplify the regulatory process for new businesses and to encourage it. Second, several of the special exceptions uses the board retained, and a few that were added. Proposed positive changes to 2 main things. Second, several of the special exception uses the board retained and uses were added. Uses. Makes sense. Thank you. Let me start over. I apologize. Second, several of the special exception uses that the board retained and a few that were added had critical requirements. Add in addition to the current general criteria to help protect nearby residential properties in the town. Finally, it was determined that many of the special exception uses were not defined at all in the definition section of the ordinance, so the board added general accepted American Planning Board Association definitions to the proposal. In general, this huge task was in-depth effort to modernize the zoning ordinance and a positive change to the Milton's land use law.
Questions?
That has to be one of the most wordy articles I have ever read. And Bruce wants to take responsibility for that wordiness? Or do you want to speak to it?
I think the planning board
You gotta use the
has
mic.
statutory responsibility to not put every change word for word that's in the ordinance in the warrant article for the zoning amendment.
Sure.
But we have a statutory responsibility to explain every place where there are changes. And that's what it does. I did go to college and I was a German major, so if you look at, how the sentences go on and on, it's just the way the Germans write sentences, so I apologize about that. But if you take your time, you can see that every place there is a proposed change in the ordinance is noted in that warrant article zoning amendment language.
Okay. And there's a more in-depth breakdown on the back page.
There is, all the wording for all of the changes is in that document back there.
Okay. Thank you. That means, Mr. Brown, I choose to speak.
Thank you. I'll try to keep it brief. Basically, ZBA does not set policy. The planning board sets policy. This was designed to simplify our work, so we had defensibility for those actions we did take, and so the people coming to the planning board had clear standards for what they could and could not do.
Sir, your name for the record.
Humphrey Williams.
Humphrey Williams, thank you.
All right, I recognize that we can't change the wording in here, but I'm hoping that someone can answer a couple questions. One of the things in here that I noticed under the special exceptions is that for a shopping mall that we're restricting the size of the building to 15,000 square feet or smaller. Is that true? Or if so, what was it prior to this? It seems awfully small for a shopping center. And the second one is, there's also an exception for sales, for auto sales, recreational equipment, and construction equipment, which requires that a minimum lot size of 3 acres. For an auto sale, I understand that, but if someone happened to have sales of recreational equipment near the water or what, they may not have 3 acres of land, and I don't understand the restriction. But I know if this is passed, those are the new exceptions.
Bruce, do you have
I do.
Thank you.
Again, Bruce Wood, town planner. The answer to your question is that, question one, is that previously there were no restrictions on the size of buildings for what's known in the zoning ordinance as shopping centers. But really the restriction is placed on the new special exception in the specific criteria that would go before the zoning board for that 15,000 square foot maximum size building is to keep big box stores from moving to Milton at some point in the future. I mean, that's basically it. It really is it's a restriction that's placed on there so that we don't lose the community character that we already have in Milton. We all know what it is. If you took a Walmart over in Rochester and you plunked it down somewhere in Milton, is it really something that you want? The planning board talked about that, and that's why that restriction became one of the safeguards to keep big boxes, not necessarily small shopping centers like the one on Route 75, but big boxes, kind of destroying the character of the town. So that's the answer to that. The second one has to do with auto sales and equipment sales and rental type uses that would pop up somewhere. I'll give you an example of that is Rochester Sports down on Route 11, where they have all kinds of jet skis and snowmobiles and ATVs, and they're outside in a lot where people can look at them. The bottom line for the planning board on this one was they wanted to protect residential abutters, especially in commercial residential zones where you can have commercial uses and residential uses side by side. That's why the restriction on the size of the lot came in. It has to do with the fact that you've got to have external lighting, that the sales hours for places like this, and it goes for the auto sales as well, that can affect the quality of life for folks that live around those types of uses. We want to have those uses, obviously, but these are the special criteria that the zoning board would make sure are in place before uses like that would come in. Did I miss anything?
Nope.
Thank you.
All right, that answers your questions. Sir, do you want me to write that?
Hi, I'm Frank Bridges. Can I ask a couple questions and then speak to it?
Yes.
First question is, would the change in the zoning bylaw allow an owner of land in the low-density zone to install an amusement park? That's number one. As of right, by the way, not with a special exception. And number two, what was the purpose of the special exceptions for existing lots? Because it seems to permit the installation of septic systems in wetlands. And three, what was the purpose of the special exception for camping grounds?
Can anyone respond to the questions? Okay.
Question number one had to do with whether, if you were a property owner in a low-density residential zone, could you start an amusement park? Well, the answer is, with this proposed change, I assume that you might be able to. But the backstory on this is, what the proposed zoning ordinance says is that what had been a special exception use for recreational facilities has been changed to a use permitted by right, which means it does not need to take the extra step as a special exception use to go to the zoning board, to have them determine whether the general and if there are any specific criteria are met before they raise their hands and say that use, and then, because it's a commercial use, go to the planning board for site plan review. So really the answer is the owner can't just start up an amusement park in Milton. But the owner would have to go to the planning board for site plan review and meet all the site plan regulations that are in place in Milton. And as you are probably aware, it is the planning board that has the authority to ensure that all commercial development in Milton is done properly. And I guess that's really my answer to that first question. The second question was,
Septic system,
What special exception for existing lots?
okay. And it reads, on an existing lot, this is the specific criteria for existing lots. You may have bought a lot that had a lot of wetlands, a lot of wetland buffers on it, and you may be told that you can't build on this lot. But if you go to the zoning board and you ask them for a special exception to erect a structure or a septic system within the wetland, it may be permitted by the zoning board after due public notice and public hearing that they find that such exception complies with all other applicable requirements set forth in this article and with each of the following. And there are several things. Number one, it has to do with the fact that it is a lot of record, and there's been a deed that went into the Stratford County Registry of Deeds prior to November 21st, 2018, which was the date of the public hearing for this type of language, and that the use for which the exception is sought cannot reasonably be carried out on a portion or other portions of the lot which are outside the wetland. This really has to do with the fact that we never want to tell people who have existing lots of record that they can't do anything. That's what this is about. And it is up to the zoning board whether or not there is a reasonable finding.
Thank you.
Very well. The special exception for camping grounds.
That's a good one.
If I could add something to the septic system issue, it doesn't mean that you changed or altered the septic system rules that are handed down by the state.
That's right.
They request a 75-foot wetland setback in the system, and in some cases way back to 50, but you have to meet other criteria.
That's right. You would have to go to the zoning board and prove that you have those permits in hand. The third question had to do with the language that was added in this proposed zoning amendment with regard to adding specific requirements, specific criteria for folks that want to have camping grounds. And I'll read them to you, and then I'll explain, I guess, the reason why. Is that, first of all, there are four new specific criteria that an applicant would have to prove to the zoning board before the zoning board said yes to allowing a camping ground. One is that camping cabins, which are defined as a certain way, which includes a yurt, it doesn't include tents, recreational vehicles, tourist rooming houses, mobile homes, and manufactured homes, are limited to 15% of the total allowable camping unit sites. So you can't put a lot of those in there, and that's what the zoning board will ensure when folks come before them. Number two, there shall be no mobile homes and manufactured homes and campgrounds, period. So they have to prove that to the zoning board as well. And number three, all accessory structures must meet setbacks that are already in the zoning ordinance and other applicable development regulations. And number four, there shall be a minimum 250-foot vegetated screen buffer from campsites to abutters' property boundaries. And that's not just to their dwellings, that's to their property boundaries. So that has to be proven to the zoning board before they can approve special exception for camping grounds. All of these, and I think it's a pretty easy answer, are added to protect residential abutters from uses like these. That's really the answer.
Okay, so I think there's a lot that's been written. This has a lot of merit in it. However, I'm going to have to urge voters not to vote for Article 3. And the reason is that the definition of a recreational facility includes an amusement park. I don't know what an amusement park is. But if I had a lot in low density zone, I have the right to install one on my lot. All I have to do is go through the planning board and the permitting process. And the planning board doesn't really have the ability to say, no, that's not appropriate as it is within the low density zone. No, that's not consistent with the plan that the town has adopted for its future. So theoretically, Disney World could come in and install, they could do that, but they could come in and install an amusement park in Milton, and there's really not much that we can do about it except make sure that the engineering is okay. Now, the problem is that the planning board has a specific job that approves the site plan, and that is the engineering consistent with the requirements and the rules of the regulation? It does not have any authority to say, is this appropriate for the site, and is this consistent with the overall intent of the zoning bylaw? That's the ZBA's pull. So, I was among the people who opposed the IPO expansion, still am, and I'm very happy to say so, but after the zoning board of adjustment denied the expansion, which I felt was done because we finally got them to define what their amenities were, and those included a lot of stuff that one would consider being an amusement park. After that, the land use office made a ruling that said, essentially, that Mighty Joe had the ability to put in the amenities that they wanted as a right, which we then appealed to the ZBA, and the ZBA said, no, wait a minute, you don't even have a plan in front of you, you're making a ruling, so we're not going to deny that, we're going to overrule that ruling. But the intent was to allow Mighty Joe to install a bunch of amenities that the ZBA had seen, and I was there. I saw what the vote was. I saw what the ZBA said, and basically they said that's really not suitable for that site. on Northeast Pond. Now, Northeast Pond is, as far as I'm concerned, Northeast Pond, Townhouse Pond, Depot Pond, and the Salmon Falls River is the most important asset of Milton. It's what brings a lot of people here. And if we allow a use on the lake that we don't have the ability to enforce the rules about, then we can destroy the lake. And that's going to destroy the town. So we have to be very careful about what we do in terms of allowing uses, particularly on the butters of the lake, that could contaminate it. Now, one of the things is that the amusement park idea, or the amenities idea, requires a lot of septic work, a lot of engineering, so that it doesn't contaminate the lake. So what do I see? On an existing lot, we can allow them to go into the wetlands to allow to have a septic area so that they can expand what their amenities are. So what the final thing that I would say is that, you can have a camping ground in the low-density zone with a special exception. But under this zoning ordinance, you can have an amusement park as of right. That doesn't make sense to me. And I think that we need to really take a careful look. It was that one thing, changing special exception to permitted use, that really got my attention.
Okay. Thank you. Bruce?
Bruce Woodruff, town planner. I want to start by saying that the planning board was not being nefarious in developing this zoning amendment proposal. They didn't think about Mighty Joe at all. And that's the way it is. I'm speaking, I believe, for the planning board right now. I think it's important to note that the planning board reviewed the master plan. I brought a copy with me today, and they looked at it as a whole, not just the natural resources section, but also the land use and economic development section, and other sections that talk about things like types of recreational uses that is a common theme that rolls through the master plan. And they said, well, recreational facilities, why should they be special exceptions? They should be permitted uses. And all that does is sends that type of commercial use to the planning board. And two more quick things. It really is unfortunate that in adding a missing definition for recreational facilities, the planner and the board used the standard definition word for word out of the American Planning Association Planning Advisory Service, big thick book that has all these land use definitions in it. And that particular land use definition said recreational facilities are, and there's a list, it says such as these uses. It doesn't say we're specifically permitting amusement parks. It's all about recreational facilities. Now, if you vote for this, and a recreational facility is changed to a use that's permitted by right, and it is a commercial use that would have to go to the planning board, it still has to receive that site plan review approval. The gentleman's correct that the planning board, once they see that that's a permitted use, they can't turn the site plan down for anything other than very major unreasonable things. However, what their duty and authority is to ensure that that development is constructed properly and then that it continues to work properly. So I'm going to read a couple of things here. The planning board must ensure that all requirements contained in site review regulations are met. Those include safeguards that ensure that both natural resources and fragile ecosystems, which have to be identified on the plan, are protected and not degraded by being proven by professional engineers and through the review and approval of state shoreland and wetland permits. In other words, the board's duty is to ensure that all developments are properly designed. It goes farther than that. The planning board, in its duty to ensure that any development does not negatively affect the quality of life and the natural environment around it, has wide latitude to add any number of conditions to an approval and to require that construction inspection occur, and then after construction, that periodic ongoing inspections with reports to the town and/or Conservation Commission occur in perpetuity. And we've done this recently with the Exit 17 gas station convenience store. We got the developer to pay for an engineer inspection that's ongoing as they slowly do what they're doing. And then the planning board ensured that there would be inspection and maintenance reports on all of the infrastructure that helps to preserve the wetland that's behind that place. So that's an example, and that's where the planning board is headed. The last thing I'm going to say is that it's not the duty of the zoning board of adjustment to ensure that development designs are right, that they continue to work correctly. It's the planning board's authority by statute. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak to Article 3? Mr. Brown.
I decided to speak again to this because this type of development and the character of Milton and the preservation of the night sky, if you get to the planning board and you want to laugh, just say Larry and dark skies and you'll get a chuckle. One of the reasons the ZBA exists is to protect the property rights of the New Hampshire Constitution. You may not deny a person a right to develop their land and use it for a defined intent. And when it comes to the planning board, the large print giveth and the small print defineth. Changing the criteria by which an operation, an amusement park, or anything comes into the town does not change such things as lighting, sound, noise, odor, screening, times of operation, traffic, best practice, use of a septic field as defined by the state criteria for septic fields, or any of the criteria which are available in the, what do they call it now, OSP, Office Strategic Planning?
Initiatives.
Strategic Initiative Planning. Those things stay in place. If you don't have a definition, you have nothing to work with.
Anyone else wishing to speak to Article 3? Cindy.
Hi, Cindy Wyatt, Milton Conservation Commission. We were invited to be part of this process. We will be having this as a discussion at our next meeting on Monday. But I was copied on a letter from Norm Turgeon, president of TPPA, and I'm going to read, if I can, that letter. It was addressed to...
Closer to the mic.
Oh, sorry. It was addressed to the selectmen and to the planning board. Is that okay? Dear board members, warrant Article 3 will ask Milton voters to approve many changes to the Milton zoning ordinance, only a few of which are detailed in the language of the warrant article itself. TPPA believes most of these changes are positive, but the two are not. These two are adding a definition for a recreational facility, which includes amusement park as an example of leisure activity included in the definition, modifying the existing requirement that a recreational facility in the low-density residential zoning district be permitted by right rather than special exception granted by the zoning board of adjustment. The TPPA Board of Directors is concerned that these changes could be detrimental to water quality of Milton 3 miles. So by a letter dated February 2nd, we asked the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board to change the proposed zoning ordinance amendment so that a recreational facility in the LDA district remains permitted only by special exception. And that's really the gist of it. And that's all.
All right, anyone else wishing to speak to Article 3? Not seeing any, I'll take a motion to close Article 3 for discussion. Mr. Gray, seconded by Mr. Brown. All those in favor of closing the discussion of Article 3, please raise your ballots. We have closed discussion. I'll instruct the clerk to place warrant Article 3 on the second session ballot as read. Is there a motion to restrict further reconsideration of Article 3? Mr. Brown, second by Ms. Steer. All those in favor of closing, denying further reconsideration of Article 3, please raise your ballots. Anyone opposed? Not seeing any, you have closed further consideration of this article today. Article 4. Can only ask a question. I'm talking to Michelle. For the ease of moving along, in the future, can I ask for one article, one motion to close discussion and at the same time further limit reconsideration today? Is there anyone opposed? It's your meeting. Is anyone opposed if I do it that way? Okay. Let's see. We'll try it. Ask we never have. But, Walter, do you have an objection to that? Okay. Because remember, the school session starts at 1 o'clock, so I don't want to give you all the time to have something to eat. Speaking of that, there is a concession stand outside on the hallway. It is well stocked. I did notice hot foods, but I also noticed some rather large, delicious muffins out there. Proceeds from the concession stand will be used to help install the donated scoreboard for the softball field in the spring. They're seeking monies to actually get it installed. They already have it purchased, but their fundraising efforts continue. And would ask you, if you so desire, to support that. Article 4. Are you in favor of the adoption of amendment number 3 as proposed by the Milton Planning Board for the town zoning ordinance as follows? To amend Article 7, non-conforming uses and lots by deleting Section C, which reads non-conforming vacant lots 1 through 3, and replacing it with a new Section C, non-conforming lots in any zone, and by deleting Section D. Existing lots of record in its entirety in order to ensure that small, dimensionally non-conforming lots of record can reasonably be built upon. Copies of the complete text of Amendment 3 are available for review at the town office and will be available the day of the election. This does require a majority vote. It is recommended by the Planning Board 7-0, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0. Motion made to open Article 4 for discussion by Brian Tebow and seconded by Ms. Karen Brown. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your ballots. Anyone opposed? Article 4 is on the floor for your discussion. Anyone wishing to speak to the article? I already read that.
Better go this time. A review of all the parcels in the town reveals that there's many substandard vacant lots of record, several located both in the village centers, created prior to the enactment or amendment of the zoning, which minimum dimension requirements for buildings, making it so that they can't be developed without a granted variance from the ZBA. This is
questions, comments? Anyone wishing to speak to the article?
Bruce.
Thank you. What the folks here don't see really is the actual language of the proposed change. And really, what it does is and make sure that there is a measure of fairness for people who own really old sometimes, lots of record that are vacant, that really would have a hard time meeting the dimensional requirements to do any kind of building on. Talking about lots that might be 75 foot wide or 50 foot wide, and there are many of those lots. Some of them are located in Milton Village, and some of them are located in Milton Mills Village. So basically what it does is it reduces the setback that's required and the frontage that's required on these smaller lots. The smaller the lot, the smaller the setback. Basically what it says is that the erection of a building or structure shall be permitted on any lot which has been duly recorded at the Stratford County Registry of Deeds on or before the effective date of adoption of this ordinance, provided that, 1, a lot shall support a land area of at least 5,000 square feet and a minimum width of 50 feet. In such cases, the following side yard restrictions shall apply. A lot with a width of 100, 10 feet or less, and greater than 75 feet shall have a minimum side yard setback of 10 feet. And B, a lot with a width of 75 feet or less and 50 feet or more shall have a minimum side yard setback of 6 feet. And then 2, individual lots which become non-conforming because of amendments to lot area requirements from the effective date of adoption of the law in any district may be built upon, provided that they are of a minimum size to meet state requirements for the New Hampshire Water Supply and Pollution Control Commission for water and septic systems and can comply with what I just read above. And finally, 3, that sufficient off-street parking is provided within the lot boundaries. In this case, sufficient is defined as 2 spaces per dwelling. And basically that's it. It really provides 2 things. It provides a measure of fairness for property owners, and it is a vehicle for economic development possibilities in the 2 villages.
All right. Anyone else with questions, comments with respect to Article 4? Not seeing any. I'll accept the motion. Closed discussion made by Mr. Gray, seconded by Mr. Motion made to close and restrict discussion of Article 4 by Mr. Gray, seconded by Mr. Rawson. So for the first time, this would do both actions at the same time. All those in favor, raise your ballots. Anyone opposed? So you do a closed discussion on Article 4 and restricted for reconsideration today. Sure. Article 5, operating budget. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate as an operating budget $4,676,733.37, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately. The amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $4,563,423.98, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town or by law, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, Roman numeral 10, and Roman numeral 15 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. 16. That's 5. Yeah, I missed it. 5. 16. Sorry. It was Romans. Majority vote required is recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 6-3. Is there a motion made to open Article 5 for discussion? Made by Mr. Gray, second by Mr. Rawson. Vote, moderator, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? We are open for discussion. The moderator recognizes Selectman Hutchins to speak to the article.
I'm going to defer to Heather Thibodeau, the former town administrator, because she's the one that put the budget together.
morning. This budget represents the prudent efforts of all departments working closely together diligently over a matter of many months to work together to come up with the best budget they could for the residents and the taxpayers of Milton. This budget represents an increase of $168,368.37 over the 2018 budget. The proposed versus default is $113,309.39. Passing of this proposed budget is critical for the prudent management of the town. This budget is what is needed to provide the services the town needs. Why the increase? An increase in employee costs is a major factor. Many of the departments in question have step plans in place. If you think about that, every year we have a step plan that requires them to increase in costs. Adding a half-a-year school resource officer to the police department in 2019. There's a plan in this budget to do that beginning in July. Other increases in operational costs. As you know, every budget has operational costs that go up throughout the year. Also, there are some merit plans and raises and cost of living raises in there as well, and other budgetary increases. What would that cost the taxpayer? It's 40 cents per thousand. Homes worth 200,000 would see an increase of $80 per year. So that's what this budget represents.
Was there an increase in health insurance this year? About how much?
I did ask the budget.
5, 7, 10, maybe 2. A little bit. Okay. All right. Okay. I just know in the past years it's gone up 12%. Kathy's going to look that up. Does anyone else have any other questions about the budget while Kathy's looking it up?
I'm Virginia Long, and I'm reading this on behalf of Steve Panish. He wanted to speak to the raises for the highway department. So this is his short letter. Since I cannot be present at this very deliberative session, I appreciate having this statement read. I want to compliment the Milton Highway Department for the high-quality work they perform, often under difficult circumstances, and especially in view of their very tight budget. For years now, the low salaries of the Milton Highway Department staff have seemed to me to verge on exploitation. Only in a tight job market is it possible to maintain continuity of personnel, given the low rates of compensation we offer. In today's tight labor market, it seems unlikely that the dedication of our crew will be sufficient to maintain a quality workforce. Recently, the Highway Department has had small increases in compensation. In my estimation, these are still inadequate. A few cents raise in tax rate can translate into significant salary improvements. We should give the Highway Department a boost, not just because it safeguards our ability to travel on town roads, but because it is the right thing to do. I do not enjoy our level of property taxation. That said, we need a level of taxation that allows the town to provide decent services and adequately compensate its employers and contractors. Sincerely, Steve Panish.
I can't answer your question, and I misspoke, Mr. Jacobs. Last year, the approved budget was for, so I'm trying to figure this out. Last year, the 2018, which I'm looking at different columns, sorry. Last year, the cost of insurance and benefits for the town in 2018 was $756,042.31. In 2019, we are looking at a total of $837.83.19. So it's just a little bit. I don't have.
Just I've noted from my work that that's an uncontrolled expense, and there again, goes back into the default. you've agreed to give people certain health insurance package. It's written in there, so it's almost unavoidable. Thank you. Any other questions? Comments? The chair, the moderator will recognize a motion to close discussion of this Article 5 and restrict it for the reconsideration. All those in favor, raise your ballots. First, I have to recognize Tom and Andy, so quick up, without having made the motion. And all those in favor? Opposed? We have closed and restricted reconsideration on Article 5. I'll instruct the clerk to place Article 5 on the second session ballot as amended. Article 6, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $325,000 for the highway and road reconstruction purposes as described in the recommended 2019 to 2024 capital improvement program. Said amount should be partially offset by revenues from the highway block grant, estimated to be $134,000. This will be a non-lapsing appropriation pursuant to RSA 32:7, Roman numeral 6, and will not lapse until completed or by December 31st of 2020, whichever occurs first. It would be a majority vote required on the 12th, and recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0, and recommended by the Budget Committee 8-0, with 8 of 4, 1 abstention. Yeah, 8, 4, and 1 abstention. 8-0. Is there a motion to open Article 6 for discussion? Made by Tom, seconded by Mr. Blake. Thank you. All those in favor, raise your ballots. Opposed? Not seeing any. Article 6 is on the floor. The moderator recognizes Selectman Ryan Tebow to speak to the article.
This article is pretty self-explanatory. It's on here every year. If anybody has any specific questions on road construction that's planned for this year, I invite the Public Works Director up to answer those. Anybody have any questions on what's planned?
John Gagner.
John, yep, just had a question. John, you have to use the microphone, please.
Hi, everybody. Question about the no trucking ordinance, just because it goes directly to the road reconstruction.
Yep.
That was passed a month ago, went through last January. Still no signs, little police presence, and still trucks 70 miles an hour every day. Talked to some of the selectmen about the status of those signs. So, any ideas? Only because it directly goes to this damage to our roads.
Pat, can you answer that?
I apologize, I didn't hear the question.
The no through truck signs, the no through trucking signs.
There currently are no-through trucking signs on Governor's Road and Newts Road. The rest of the signs are still on order. Probably another week or so they should be in, and then they'll start.
Is that just a seasonal closure, Pat? Or is that a...
No, sir, that is an ordinance that was passed by the Board of Selectmen, so there should be no through trucking completely year-round.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions, comments to this argument? Article 6. Not seeing any. Would anyone like to make a motion to close the discussion and limit further discussion? I'll recognize Tom Gray and second by Karen Brown. All those in favor of the motion? Anyone opposed? Not seeing any, you have closed further discussion to Article 6. Closed it to discussion and further restricted reconsideration today. I'll instruct the clerk to place Article 6 on the second session ballot as read. Article 7, Fire Department Equipment and Capital and Apparatus Capital Reserve Fund. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $70,000 to be added to the Milton Fire Department Equipment and Apparatus Capital Reserve Fund previously established for the purpose of funding future capital expenditures as described in the recommended 2019-2024 capital improvements program. This appropriation will be funded by transfer from the fund balance, and no additional amount will be raised by new taxation. It would require a majority vote on the 12th, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 2 noes and 1 abstention. Is there a motion made to open Article 7 for discussion? Made by Andy, second. Tom McDougall, all those in favor of opening Article 7, please vote ballots. Anyone opposed? Article 7 is on the floor. Anyone wishing to speak to Article 7? Can anyone out there tell me what the current fund balance is for the fire department equipment apparatus capital improvement fund? 30,000 currently? Approximately?
Yeah, 30,000.
Okay. 30,000.
Of the part of
Chief?
Is actually 90,000, and now the money, 95,000, the money that was approved in March didn't show up as of 12/31.
So when you say approved last March?
Last March isn't showing in that number. It was 65,000 last March.
There it is behind you, Mr. Okay. Second question, do you have does the department have any specific plans for this money at this time?
So with the 95,000 plus the 70,000 that's being appropriated this year, that will be the remainder of the money that we need to replace our air packs. And our air packs are 14 years old, 15 years is the life expectancy of them. So they need to be replaced 2019, 2020.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else, questions, comments? Not seeing any, the moderator will recognize a motion to close further discussion of Article 7 and to restrict reconsideration. Made by Tom Gray, seconded by Karen Brown. All those in favor of the motion on the floor? Thank you. Anyone opposed? Not seeing any, we have closed discussion of Article 7 and closed for further reconsideration. I'll instruct the clerk to place warrant Article 7 on the second session ballot as read. Moving on to Article 8. Highway Department Special Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $29,000 to be added to the Highway Department Special Equipment Capital Reserve Fund previously established for the purpose of funding future capital expenditures as described in the recommended 2019-2024 capital improvements program. This appropriation will be funded by transfer from the fund balance, and no additional amount will be raised by new taxation. Majority vote will be required on the 12th. It has been recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0. It is recommended by the Budget Committee 8-0-1. Is there a motion to open Article 8 for discussion? Ryan? Second by Andy Rossin. All those in favor of opening this article for discussion, please bring the ballots. Anyone opposed? Not seeing any, Article 7 is on the floor. Anyone wishing to speak to the article? Brian, do you want to speak to the article? Article 8. Right. I'm going to ask the same question. What's in the current ballot?
$844. Wow.
All right, so this is used for future purposes of DPW equipment in accordance with the 2019-2024 capital improvement program. current balance is $844.99. This funding can accompany the unreserved fund balance in 2019, so there will be no effect on this year's tax rate. And the next slide shows the equipment that is in the capital improvement program.
Just for the sake of discussion, what's in the undesignated fund balance, or what you call it, the surplus? Is it a mill?
For the undesignated?
Yes, undesignated fund balance.
I have that.
Sure.
I thought the question might come up, so I brought a copy of last year's audit report. The unassigned fund balance at the end of the last year that the town was audited, it was $1,564,119, so a little bit over 1.5 million.
Thank you. Other questions, comments with respect to Article 8? And thank you to whoever put together the slides that appear behind you. It's a big help. We never used to do that in the past. And it's great for informational purposes to the voters. I appreciate it. Thomas.
Just one question on that undesignated fund balance number. You said the last audit would not be the year ending 2018 or 2017?
2017, the town hasn't been audited in 2018.
Okay, so that wouldn't necessarily take into account funds that have been transferred from, that were moved in 2018.
There was 500,000 used to offset the fund balance of the tax rate in 2018.
Okay, so roughly
1 million.
1 million, maybe a touch under. I think that's what I remember.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Just want to make sure nobody's confused. Think we've got a huge pile of money out there.
Other questions? Not seeing any, the moderator will accept the motion from the floor to Mr. Graham to close discussion on Article 8 for the strict reconsiderations. Mr. Graham? I've got a second yet, so.
Just if the town administrator could give the recommended percentage that the state recommends for the unexpended fund balance, that's why we spend it down.
Andy, go ahead. Do you know what I've heard as low as 5% and as high as 10%.
Yes, 5% I think is the minimum recommendation. Many communities have policies requiring much higher percentages up into the teens.
For anyone who's unfamiliar with the process, the Department of Revenue Administration for the state recommends that each town keep in its undesignated fund balance, which you call your savings account, the minimum of 5% of your annual operating budget, and but more if you can support it. And yes, some communities go up as high as 10%. So if we've got a $5 million budget, town budget, we've got $1 million in the undesignated fund balance, and we're somewhere around, what, 20%? You would say? Okay. But do understand that part of that is uncollected property taxes, and part of it is actual surplus, meaning that we didn't spend all of last year's budget, the town did not, and thus that money, when appropriated, still stays in the town's coffers, and but is in your undesignated fund balance. That's why that's all. Any further questions, comments? I did have a motion by Mr. Gray to end discussion, but I didn't recognize the second. Mr. Rossi is the second. Okay, the motion is on the floor. All those in favor of closing discussion on Article 8 and restricting reconsideration? Anyone opposed? Not seeing any, you have closed the discussion and restricted reconsideration. I'll instruct the clerk to place warrant article 8 on the second session ballot as read. Article 9, Highway Department Capital Reserve Vehicle Fund. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $49,000 to be added to the Highway Department Vehicle Capital Reserve Fund previously established for the purpose of funding future capital expenditures as described in the recommended 2019 to 2024 capital improvements program. This appropriation will be funded by transfer from the fund balance, and no additional amount will be raised by new taxation. Majority vote is required. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 8-0-1. Motion made to open article for discussion by Ryan Tebow, seconded by Tom Gray. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your ballots. Opposed? Not seeing any, we are discussing Article 9. Moderator recognizes Selectman Ryan Tebow to speak to the article.
This capital reserve fund is used to purchase DPW pickup trucks and snowplows in accordance with the 2019 to 2024 capital improvement program. The current capital reserve fund balance is $6,526.80 as of the end of December 2018. This funding will come from the unreserved fund balance from 2019. So there is no effect on this year's net.
Further questions, comments with respect to Article 9? Not seeing any, the moderator will recognize a motion from the floor to close discussion on Article 9 with further limit reconsideration made by Mr. Gray, seconded by Ms. Warren Steer. All those in favor of the motion on the floor? Anyone opposed? We have closed the discussion on Article 9 and further restricted reconsideration. I'll instruct the clerk to place warrant Article 9 on the second session ballot as it was read. Article 10, Municipal Buildings Capital Reserve Fund. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to be added to the Municipal Buildings Capital Reserve Fund previously established for the purpose of funding future capital expenditures as described in the recommended 2019 to 2024 capital improvements program. This appropriation will be funded by transfer from the fund balance, and no additional amount will be raised by new taxation. Majority vote is required. On the 12th, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 9-0. Motion made to open Article 10 for discussion by Ryan Tebow, seconded by Mr. Gray. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your ballots. Anyone opposed to the motion? Not seeing any, Article 10 is on the floor. Moderator recognizes Ryan Tebow to speak to the article.
This is to be used for future design and construction and maintenance of town buildings such as DPW or town hall, according to the 2019 to 2024 CFP. Again, this is coming from the unreserved fund balance in 2019, so there's no effect on this year's tax.
Questions, comments, amendments? Not seeing any, the moderator will recognize the motion to close Article 10 for discussion and limit further reconsideration today, made by Mr. Gray, seconded by Mr. Rosslin. All those in favor of that motion, please raise your ballots. Anyone opposed? We have closed discussion on Article 10 and further limited reconsideration today. I'll instruct the clerk to place warrant Article 10 in the second session ballot as read. Moving on to Article 11. Milton NH Public Library Capital Reserve Fund. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $52,000 to be placed in the Milton NH Public Library Capital Reserve Fund previously established for the purpose of funding future capital expenditures as described in the recommended 2019 to 2024 capital improvements program. This appropriation will be funded by transfer from the fund balance, and no additional amount will be raised by new taxation. Majority vote is required on the 12th, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 9-0. Motion made to open Article 11 for discussion by Selectman Aaron Hutchins, seconded by Tom Gray. All those in favor of opening Article 11 for discussion, please raise your ballots. Anyone opposed? Not seeing anyone, the moderator recognizes Selectman Hutchins.
Good morning. This warrant article is to continue the restoration of the Milton Free Public Library. The current fund balance there is $25,028.04 as of December 31st. The estimated tax impact, there will be none. Money will come from the unreserved fund balance from 2019.
Questions, comments? Yes.
I have a question regarding Article 10 and Article 11. Why is the library separate from the municipal capital reserve fund?
Could it simply be that there are two designated, there were two capital reserve funds previously established?
And they're both for buildings?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
They were probably established at different meetings, different years, and therefore they're still different. It's like having two savings accounts at the same bank. Mr. Brown?
If I could just put a slightly different hat on, the library has gotten a little longer in the back page more. The library has received 4 L-chip grants. The latest one is for $36,357. It requires a match. Les was on board when we first started the restoration projects, and it has been a rocky path, and this is related to our swaying bell tower and those wonderful, elegant, special cut shingles, which are going to be very expensive to replace because that's how LSHA wants it.
Further questions, comments? Not seeing any further questions or comments, the moderator will recognize a motion to close Article 11 for discussion until limit reconsideration today made by Mr. Gray, second by Mr. Williams. All those in favor of that motion? Anyone opposed? Not seeing any, you have closed Article 11 for discussion today and further limited reconsideration of the article. I'll instruct the clerk to place warrant Article 11 on the second session ballot as it was read. Article 12, Town of Milton Technology Fund. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $6,000 to be placed in the Town of Milton Technology Fund previously established for the purpose of funding future capital expenditures as described in the recommended 2019 to 2024 capital improvement program. This appropriation will be funded by transfer from the fund balance, and no additional amount will be raised by new taxation. Majority vote is required on March 12th, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 5-4. Motion made to open Article 12 for discussion by Tom Gray, second by Aaron Brown with the phone up. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your ballots. Anyone opposed? Thank you. Article 12 is open for discussion. Moderator doesn't know who to recognize. I don't have it written down.
This article is to update computers, software, hardware, and other technological items that are used in municipal government. The fund balance currently stands at $6,088.75 as of December 31st. The estimated tax impact will be zero, as it is used from the unreserved fund balance in 2019.
Questions, comments? Silent group. Okay, not seeing any questions or comments. The moderator will recognize a motion to close Article 12 for discussion and to limit reconsideration today. It's made by Mr. Gray, seconded by Mr. Williams. All those in favor of Dow's motion, please raise your ballot. Anyone opposed? We have closed Article 12 to discussion and further reconsideration today. I'll instruct the clerk to place warrant Article 12 on the second session ballot as it was read. Geographic, Article 13, Geographic Information System. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,500 for the purpose of continued upgrades to the public web-based Geographic Information System for the town as described in the recommended 2019 and 2024 capital improvements program. This appropriation will be funded by transfer from the fund balance, and no additional amount will be raised by new taxation. Majority vote required on March 12th. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0. Recommended by the Budget Committee 9-0. Motion is made to open Article 13 for discussion by Ryan Petivo, seconded by Tom Gray. All those in favor of the motion to open Article 13 for discussion, please raise your ballots. Anyone opposed to discussing Article 13? Not seeing any. Article 13 is on the floor. The chair, moderator recognizes Selectman Ryan Petivo to speak to the article.
This is used to create a public web-based GIS system for the town to aid in future planning, and then you've got retention and retrieval. This will also come from the unreserved fund balance in 2019, so there's no effect on this year's tax. A great asset to the town.
Safe for the record, I have the ability to use one of my job and working in the highway section, and it's invaluable for finding out and determining who the residents are that are serving on certain properties, where they live. A lot of times you get a call, my mailbox is down on the third house on the right, such and such road. Okay. They can know that stuff. GIS really helps you figure that out and render service to the residents. Mr. Williams.
Yes, I failed to mention before that if I froth at the mouth and talk way too much, that you're all welcome to tackle me. I really wanted to make sure that everybody understood that last year the voters approved $8,000 to create the public web-based geographic information system, and currently it's under construction. There is a beta site that is just now coming up. There's a lot of work involved in putting this together, but what we'll have in the end is a great tool that everyone in this room can use if you have internet or broadband and a computer without having to go to town hall. What the $2,500 in this warrant article is to be used for, and I'm going to stop that for just a second to say that you're going to see $2,500 a year being asked for, or $3,000 a year being asked for about 5 more years. And that is to be used to develop new data sets that can be added to the GIS system. And what you're going to get when it opens up, you're going to get the property map, you're going to get boundary lines, you're going to get building locations, you're going to get assessment data, you're going to be able to look at your assessment cards. anything that is a document or information may be added to each lot. So these are smart maps. They have data and information that when you click on it, it comes up on your screen. So you're going to be able to see a lot of things that you've never had before. But what the money's being asked for here are to develop new maps such as comprehensive shoreline protection maps, which will show you if you live along the lakes, whether you're in that shoreline protection zone. There's 3 sections. Flood maps, the FEMA maps, which are very, very good to use instead of going to the maps in town hall. It's pretty awful. You'll be able to see whether your building is in the floodplain, not just your property. Natural resource inventory maps, wetland maps, soil maps. You will now have a zoning map, and more planimetrics than are on the tax maps today. There's a lot of things that we'll figure out we need. We're going to develop a 5-year GIS plan, meeting with all the department heads, boards and commissions, brainstorm and find out exactly what they need that would help both them and the public. So people like Pat Smith in the back, he's going to get a culvert data set that has information on all the culverts in town and bridges. He's going to get roadway conditions by segment, which will make it easier for him to figure out which roads are needing to be fixed sooner. And there's a lot of things. Fire department with their water resources data layer where they can figure out where the water is, whether it's wet hydrants, dry hydrants. I'm talking too much, but I hope you all get the idea. First of all, it costs money to develop these data layers and map layers that are smart and have information that needs to be collected. So please know that that's what this is for. It's not to create a system. Thank you. I talk too much.
Questions, comments?
Good job.
No amendments? Moderator will recognize from the floor an article, motion to close discussion on Article 13 and to limit reconsideration. This is made by Mr. Gray, seconded by Mr. Williams. All those in favor of closing the article to further discussion and no longer reconsidering. All those opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. I'll instruct the clerk to place warrant Article 13 on the second session ballot as it is read. Article 14, Bridge Capital Reserve Fund. Oh, by the way, does anyone want to take it, right? I see one nodding yes. Probably 2 others that want to. I'll go for a 5-minute break. We'll reconvene at 10:45.
I actually had a couple people come up and sit here. We were not involved.
Thank you.
We need to come back to order, please. Time being 10:52, I'm going to call this meeting back to order. Article 14, Bridge Capital Reserve Fund. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $25,000 to be placed in the Bridge Capital Reserve Fund previously established for the purpose of funding future capital expenditures as described in the recommended 2019 to 2024 capital improvements program. This appropriation will be funded by transfer in the fund balance and no additional amount will be raised by new taxation. Majority vote is required on March 12th. Is recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0, recommended by the Budget Committee 9-0.
Yeah.
Motion made to open Article 14 by Mr. Ryan Thibodeau, and seconded by Mr. Tom Gray. All those in favor of opening Article 14 for discussion, please raise your ballots. Anyone opposed? Article 14 is open for discussion. The moderator recognizes Selectman Ryan Thibodeau to speak to the article.
This capital reserve fund is to be used for future replacement of bridges in Milton. This would include the Wyoming Road Bridge, which is currently on the red list by the state of New Hampshire. There is currently another existing capital reserve fund for bridges, but that can only be used for border bridges. This is going to come from the unreserved fund balance in 2019, so there's no effect on this year's.
Is there already money in this fund? Andy?
Yes, there was $25,000 appropriated last year for this article, and it was transferred on December 14th, so there is money in this fund.
Does anyone know what millennium or what year the New Hampshire DOT would move on this particular bridge? Andy?
Mr. Moderator, the town of Milton has two capital reserve funds for bridges. This one was established last year in Article 14 for the Winding Hill Bridge. The other warrant article, I don't know what year it was established, but it's for the Milton Main Bridge. That article has, or that fund rather, has $165,000 in it currently. I spoke to Mr. Willoughby on Thursday. He's the project manager for the bridges at the New Hampshire Department of Transportation. He said this Winding Hill Road Bridge is, he's carrying it on his records as with a cost of just over $1 million. The design hasn't been started yet. That's going to be the town's responsibility to contract for an engineering firm and to begin the design and permitting process. And in fact, he said they don't even have a project number assigned to that bridge yet, so it's at a very preliminary phase. The other bridge, the one to Maine, New Hampshire DOT has agreed to manage that project. They are preparing to begin the design of that bridge. The current cost of it, he estimates, will be about $3 million. The state of New Hampshire is responsible for half of that cost. Milton's portion will be $300,000. So 10% of the project is Milton's responsibility. Like I said, you have $165,000 in that capital reserve fund. I mentioned to Mr. Willoughby that we don't have a capital reserve fund for the main bridge project on this year's town warrant. So we're not going to be able to appropriate any money for that project this year. He said that's not really a problem because it's going to take them 2 or 3 years to work through the design of the project. And so you should anticipate for the next couple of years having to make an appropriation for that main bridge project. I think that's all I need to report.
Further questions, comments with respect to Article 14? Thomas?
Not specifically against Article 14, 14, but what was just mentioned, I think I heard you say that the total cost of the bridge was, between the states was $3 million?
Correct.
New Hampshire share is $1.5 million?
Between the state and the town of Milton are.
Yep,
it's
1.5, okay, half of it.
Yeah.
So why is it that Milton would have to come up with $300,000 if the state of New Hampshire share is only $1.5 million?
20%.
I thought it was 10%.
10% of the cost.
Total cost or New Hampshire's cost?
10% of the project cost is what I was told will be Milton's responsibility.
Okay, all right, so 20% of New Hampshire's cost.
Mr. Brown.
This goes to one of my particular interests. If you go to the web, a thing that computers has, you will find an entire page, page after page, of New Hampshire covered bridges. A tourist draw, an iconic part of the New Hampshire landscape. I recommended last year that we look for a wood truss bridge to go out Townhouse Road and call it the Bi-State Byway Bridge, which would be a lovely other end balance to the townhouse and would become a focus point for people traveling to the area for recreation. Anybody who wants to pick that up and run with it, please do it.
Just to follow up on that, when I talked to Mr. Volke about this, he said that the state of Maine is going to be using federal dollars for their portion of the project, and so he said that the state of New Hampshire will likely be using federal dollars for their portion of the project also. And he said anytime you have one federal dollar involved in a project, you got to meet all the federal design requirements. So whether that makes a wooden truss bridge feasible to meet those standards or not, I don't know, but just so you're aware of that.
I am unfortunately already aware of that.
Any comments, considerations, discussion regarding Article 14? Motion? Mr. Gray would like to make a motion to close further discussion on Article 14 and limit further reconsideration for today. That's a second. Mr. Rawson, all those in favor, please raise your ballots. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, you have closed further discussion on Article 14 and closed reconsideration of that article today. I'll instruct the clerk to place warrant Article 14 on the second session ballot as it was read. Article 15, to eradicate invasive species. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $10,000 for the purposes of eradicating invasive plant species from water bodies or bodies of water in the town of Milton. This is a special warrant article as described in the recommended 2019-2024 capital improvements program. This appropriation will be funded by transfer from the fund balance and no additional amount will be raised by new taxation. The majority vote is required on March 12th. It has been recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0. It is recommended by the Budget Committee 9-0. Motion made to open Article 15 for discussion by Andy Lucier, seconded by Tom Gray. All those in favor of opening Article 15 for discussion, please raise your ballots. Anyone opposed? Article 15 is on the floor. The moderator recognizes Andy Lucier to speak to the article.
It's basically, I'm going to read verbatim what's behind me, so. And this is going to be an ongoing battle. Basically, it's protecting our greatest resource in the town of Milton, 3 ponds. It's basically coming from the fund balance, but it's probably gonna be a yearly thing that you're gonna see, because it's not gonna go away, but if we don't deal with it, it's just gonna expand. I mean, we've got, things that are spreading northeast pond, okay, basically in front of Mighty Joe now, so, that's good.
Anyone with questions related to Article 15? Sir. State your name again for the record.
Sure. John Gagnon. I was curious, are there any state or federal funds that are available to assist with this, given it is an invasive species? I know we're certain breeds and wildlife that are federal funds available. Can we look into that as an opportunity or an option? Is there something, has something to look into for that? This, as Andy said, this is our biggest resource in the lake guys we have. And so we need to continue on with that. I think that what we're asking for is fair, but if there's more out there that we can get, has that been researched?
Is anyone here, Mr. Williams?
I do know that they have received grant money
They have
to
received-
deal with this, plus they also receive funding from the state of Maine, so I mean, it's a mutual project across both states that.
Awesome.
Three Ponds Protective Associations.
I hadn't been able to find anything, so I was looking and looking, but that's perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. For anyone who didn't hear Virginia's comment that there is funding that comes down through HPS, Department of Environmental Services.
A lot more than that.
Okay. Thank you. Further questions, comments with respect to Article 15? Sharon Brown makes a motion to close Article 15 for discussion and further to respect reconsideration today, seconded by Tom Gray. All those in favor, please raise your ballots. Anyone opposed? Not seeing any, motion passes to close discussion on Article 15 and to further restrict reconsideration today. I'll instruct the clerk to place warrant Article 15 on the second session ballot as read. I got to change the wording. I don't think I could give the clerk an instruction. I think I can make a strong recommendation, but I don't think she takes my instructions. So, just realize that word's wrong.
Like marriage.
She says she's not offended. Article 16, Conservation Commission Casey Road Fund. To raise and appropriate $5,000 for the town conservation fund to help the Casey Road Conservation Land Easement Project, which will place a conservation easement on 79 forested acres of town-owned land on Casey Road in Milton. The easement to be held by the Qualified Land Trust, Moose Mountains Regional Greenways. Majority vote will be required on March 12th. It has been recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0, by the Budget Committee 8-1. Is there a motion made to open Article 16 by Amy Lucier and seconded by Tom Gray? All those in favor of the motion to open discussion on Article 16, please raise your ballots. Anyone opposed to discussing Article 16? Not seeing any. The moderator recognizes Amy Lucier to speak to the article.
I need to defer to, as long as she would speak for this.
Moderator recognizes Virginia Wong.
I'm on the Casey Road Protection Committee, which is a subcommittee of the Milton Conservation Commission. We're a volunteer committee, and the purpose of the committee is to advise the Board of Selectmen and help the town get a conservation easement on this 79-acre property, which is actually a merge of two different properties, a 73.5 and a 5.5. And the town voted separately to place each one of those properties under conservation easement in 2016 and 2018. And the reason we want to, and the town wants to place the easements is because these are wonderful properties, or it's a combined wonderful property, lovely wooded and great for recreation. We've had a trail party and a dog walk there, and people very much enjoy them, came out. It also has good wildlife habitat and water resources that need to be protected. And of course, the best way to protect is to have a conservation easement, which means it'll be protected forever. It will never get developed once the easement is on it, and of course, the town already voted to do that, so now we're working on getting it done. An easement is, however, an expensive proposition. But we're making great progress towards raising the funds. We've raised over $40,000, approximately $15,000 in gifts from individual town residents, and a $20,000 pledge from the Milton Conservation Fund. However, we did not get the $15,000 Moose Plate grant that was applied for by the town. And to make up for that, partially, Moose Mountains Regional Greenways has pledged $5,500, and we're working to make up the rest. This warrant article is one way that will compensate for not having gotten that grant. It's a very small implication for your taxes, but a very big asset for the town. So we would appreciate your support of the warrant article. And we're going to then try to raise another few $1,000s. I think it's around 2 to 3 in individual donations. We would also appreciate your support in that goal. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, comments?
Just briefly. My name is Janice Long, and I think one of the issues that we should look at with this is it's an attraction for tourists. When tourists start parking their cars in a given area, and then they want to know where the trails go, whether there's any scenic views, things like that, but it would enhance the tourism.
Thank you. Other questions, comments, considerations? Not seeing any. Moderator will recognize a motion to close Article 16 for discussion and to limit reconsideration today, moved by Tom Gray, seconded by Mr. Williams. All those in favor of the motion on the floor, please raise your ballots. All those opposed, please raise your ballots. Not seeing any, you have passed motion to close discussion on Article 16 and to limit further reconsideration of the article today. I will ask the clerk to place warrant Article 16 on the second session ballot as it was read. Article 17, Milton Cemetery Expendable Trust Fund. To see if the town will vote to allow all future proceeds received from the sale of rights to enter in Milton Town Cemetery.
Rights to return.
Like intern?
Rights to return.
Intern.
Burial.
Intern. Yeah. In Milton Town Cemetery is to be deposited into the Milton Cemetery Expendable Trust Fund pursuant to RSA 31:19A and RSA 289:2A. This is a corrective warrant article for the warrant Article 9 approved in 2016. Majority vote will be required on March 12th and be recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0. Motion made to open Article 17, but for discussion by Amy Lucier, seconded by Mr. Williams. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your ballots. Article 17 is on the floor. The moderator recognizes Amy Lucier to speak to the article.
I'm going to defer that to
Mr. Ryan?
No.
Heather.
This is basically just a housekeeping measure. In going through, we noted that there was a corrective action that needed to be taken from the 2016 warrant article. The 2016 warrant article was Article 9, and that read, to see if the town will vote to establish an expendable trust fund to be known as the Town of Milton Cemetery Expendable Trust Fund for the maintenance and upkeep of the cemetery, and to raise and appropriate $24,961 to be put in the fund with this amount to come from the Milton Mills Cemetery Association. Further, to name the cemetery's trustees as agents to expend from the fund. Majority vote required. So, after consultation with the cemetery trustees, the attorneys, and we realized that this housekeeping article needed to be placed, and we're asking for the voters to approve this.
Bruce.
Just one quick thing. I mean, the reason why this has to be done is because the first warrant article that created the fund didn't allow you to put any other monies in there other than the $24,000. And this one says now that when you sell burial plots, the money from those sales can now be placed into the Milton Cemetery Expendable Trust Fund. Thank you.
And we're selling the right to inter, actually.
Very good.
So, because we're not selling the plots, we're selling the right to inter them.
Thank you. Questions, comments, other considerations? Any amendments? Not seeing any, the moderator will recognize a motion to close Article 17 for discussion made by and further reconsideration made by Tom Gray, seconded by Andy Rossi. All those in favor of that motion? Anyone opposed to that motion? Not seeing any, the motion passes to close discussion on Article 17 and to restrict further reconsideration today. I'll ask the clerk to place warrant Article 17 on the second session ballot as it was read. Article 18, Community Revitalization Tax Relief Incentive pursuant to RSA 79E. Shall the town vote to adopt the provisions of RSA 79E, the Community Revitalization Tax Relief Incentive? Upon receipt of an application, the governing body will hold a public hearing to determine whether the structure is a qualifying structure, whether the proposed rehabilitation qualifies as a substantial rehabilitation, and whether there is a public benefit to granting the requested tax relief. This RSA gives the select board another tool to encourage reinvestment in the designated area, compact areas of Milton and Milton Mills, specifically the village center of Milton Mills and Milton, by adoption of RSA 79-E. 1, it is declared to be a public benefit to enhance downtowns and town centers with respect to community activity, cultural and historic character, sense of community, and in-town residential uses that contribute to economic and social vitality. 2, it is further declared to be a public benefit to encourage the rehabilitation of many underutilized structures in urban and town centers as a means of encouraging growth of economic, residential, and municipal uses in a more compact pattern in accordance with RSA 9-B. Short-term property assessment tax relief and a related covenant to protect public benefit as provided under this chapter are considered to provide a demonstrated public benefit if they encourage substantial rehabilitation and use of qualifying structures as defined in this chapter. Majority vote required on March 12th, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0. Motion made to open this article for discussion by Aaron Hutchins and seconded by Tom Gray. All those in favor of the motion to raise your ballots on the Anyone opposed? Not seeing any, the motion passes. Article 18 is on the floor. The moderator recognizes Selectman Aaron Hutchins to speak to the article.
Basically, what we did here is we took the RSA, copied it, and placed it in the warrant. The reason why this is beneficial to Milton and the Mills is because in order to revitalize all of these properties that we see and we have talked about, we need to give an incentive to somebody to come in and to revitalize those properties. If we pass this, we have the ability to be able to give tax breaks for a short period of time to allow someone to come in and rehab the building. So we recommend that we pass this. And I was reminded, I'm also a member of the Economic Development Committee, so it behooves us, we've talked about this at great length, and we, the Economic Development Committee, are behind this 110%.
Questions, comments? Virginia?
I'm just curious about the period of time. Does the governing body have to decide for every year, or do they decide for several years? Does it have to be a different hearing every year? How does that work?
Yes, Andy.
period of tax relief can be up to a period of 5 years. There is provision in the statute that it could be extended for additional period or 2 to 4 years, I think, given certain circumstances. If I may, I might just like to relay to you that when I worked for the town of Wolfboro, we adopted this provision. And if you're familiar with Wolfboro Center, there's a town hall, a carpenter school, and a big old yellow house that was in very dilapidated condition. And we were afraid we were going to lose it or it would be demolished and a dollar store or something would go in there. But fortunately, we had somebody locally that bought it and invested a couple $1 million in totally reconstructing the property and turning it into basically a luxury inn. And that was done through this program. And the way it worked is that the house, as it was sitting there very dilapidated, had a very de minimis assessment. I think it was like less than $300,000. After they invested a couple $1 million in it, obviously it has a greater value, but the new assessed value is not going to go into effect for 5 years. So they get a 5-year grace period, so that they can try to make a go of it, but with not a big tax burden for the first few years to help recoup some of their investment cost. And then after 5 years, they'll be paying the full freight on the property. So that's how it works.
Thank you. You're welcome.
I have one question. Is the board's authority to enter into this perpetual from today, or does that authority have to be removed?
What you're doing here is adopting the statute. Once it's a local acceptance statute. So once you've adopted it, you're giving the Board of Selectmen the authority to do this. Now, the Board of Selectmen will have to adopt rules and regulations governing how they're going to administer the program. Fortunately, I just went through that a few years ago in Wolfboro, so I can easily access that stuff. And then, it's up to your locally elected officials to manage the program and to negotiate how it's going to work with the different property owners that want to take advantage of it.
Any other further questions, comments, or considerations? Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Just to point out, this is a town project. We can only be behind it 100%. Only the state has to do 100%. There is a small error, grammatical, just a scribal correction. About last line down, it is the compact areas of Milton and Milton Mills, specifically the village. Crossed out too much. The village center should be an S on centrist. The other point is, I believe, Mr. Bridges, who talked about his concerns for the amusement park. Read this in terms of your concerns for Article 3, where it talks about public benefit, the covenant to protect public benefits, the substantial rehabilitation use of qualified instructors to encourage growth in a beneficial pattern for the town. This is almost a sidebar comment on the purposes of the master plan. And it is specific, and it is critical, and I was also on the Economic Development Committee. Everyone there supports it as one more tool to bring qualifying development and historic preservation to the town. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, considerations? John, can I infer that you're making an amendment at the S?
I don't make any, usually you can correct scribal errors without further comment, but if you want to, I move that the plural S be added to the last line of paragraph 1 under Article 18, so that it reads specifically the village centers of Milton Mills.
So I'll take that as an amendment on the floor. Is there a second? There is. Oh, okay, further discussion of the amendment to add the letter S. Sounds like Sesame Street, doesn't it? That's how I remember that. And I'm going to play the formality of actually writing this particular amendment to the warrant article out because we're wasting ink. All those in favor of the amendment on the floor? Anyone opposed? You have added the letter S. Yeah, that's fantastic. Is there any further discussion with respect to Article 18? Not seeing any. The moderator will entertain a motion to close Article 18 for discussion, made by Mr. Gray, second by Mr. Williams, and to also further restrict reconsideration today. All those in favor of that motion, please vote the ballots. Anyone opposed? I'll instruct the clerk to place warrant Article 18 on the second session ballot as amended with the letter S. Moving on. Article 19, Town Boat Ramp Revitalization and Construction. Submitted by petition to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $15,000 to be added to the Milton Recreational Capital Reserve Fund previously established for the purpose of renovation and reconstruction of the town-owned boat ramp as described in the capital improvement plan. This amount will be added to the existing $15,000 that was appropriated in 17 and for anticipated construction to begin in 19. Majority vote is required and on March 12th and is recommended by the Budget Committee 702. Motion made to open Article 19 for discussion by Aaron Hutchins, seconded by Mr. Gray. All those in favor of opening Article 19 for discussion, please raise your ballots. Anyone opposed? Not seeing any, Article 19 is on the floor, and the chair, moderator recognizes Aaron Hutchins.
For those of you who watch the Board of Selectmen meetings and know word by word what is stated in there, know that probably a month ago in one of our meetings, I don't remember when, but about a month ago, it was asked that the verbiage be added, that it was not approved by the planning board as part of the civil, or as part of the capital improvement plan. I want to bring that up because it was brought up to me the other night that they needed to be added in. And in light of everybody who watches those meetings and follows the minutes, I didn't want somebody to come back and say, this verbiage was not added, should have been. So, with full transparency, I wanted to make you aware of that. I did talk to legal counsel, actually we wrote notes back and forth, and the legal counsel stated that the verbiage was not added. First of all, it was a petition warrant article, and it was not added because the planning board's role in making recommendations is limited to the zoning amendments. So I just wanted to make that clear. I think it's important. I think the ponds are very important to our community. I think it's, and I've stated this before, it's the pearl in the oyster. I think it's important that we keep them clean. I think it's important that the milfoil and the naiad is spot there. I think it's important to have conservation and to keep up with all of those things. I think it's important to have a boat ramp that's fully functioning and usable for all of the people of Milton and Milton Mills. I appreciate everyone's support in bringing this to fruition this year. Be nice to see a new boat ramp, and I appreciate all of you for bringing it forward.
Hold on a
No,
second.
no, I just wanted, because of the minutes.
So, I'm on board as to leaving the article as it is. In discussion with town council, you know, this is a petition article. We cannot substantially change the wording so as to alter the petitioner's intent on this particular article. That would be, I'm almost constrained that adding any other wording would be not what, obviously not what the petitioner intended. I think the petitioner wanted to add that wording with respect to what the planning board's CIP is. They put it, but they chose to leave it out. And having it in there or having it not in there, in my opinion, is one person, does not change or alter the effect of the warrant. But I, as I said, this is your meeting, and I can't be over it. And having a side next in a minute. Anyone having any questions with respect to this? Pat?
Okay.
James?
Harry?
That's okay, for years. What did I get wrong? Colin, anyhow, somebody who was supervising the checklist for years, I called him the wrong name. Exactly, good.
Have you seen me?
Here you go.
Thank you. I just want to change that the recommended by the budget committee should be 711, not 702, with 1 no and 1 abstention. Oh, so I guess I make a motion to change the recommended by the budget committee to 711. He's on the sidewalk. Oh, good, we got a second right there? All right, I guess all those. I'm going to
Hi, Dave.
no problem. Mary?
Bill, Mary?
I'm Bob, you're Mary.
Okay.
Anyway, she seconded, no, I motioned, she seconded, Tim motioned, Tim seconded.
You're saying that the budget committee has noted 702, correct?
Absolutely.
What does your minutes reflect?
Okay, I have it right here, let's see, this one. We had 1 no, and we had an abstain, and I just verified with that particular person that he did indeed abstain. So it should be 711.
There again, that doesn't change the
No, it doesn't
petitioner's
change
intent.
everything but.
It just clarifies your vote.
Right.
Okay.
But
Okay, there, I am understanding there is a motion to amend how the budget committee is represented on this. I take that from the budget committee. I don't see that as a floor amendment. I don't see that as an amendment to the article, as much as it is a footnote, comment to how the board voted. I would leave that to the board. Does the board budget committee want to change its vote, as Vera fiscal year to 7/1. You can take us a minute to petition your, I take it you are, as a budget committee, as a group, is in session, and somebody from the budget committee make the motion to your own budget committee.
I will make a motion that we change recommended by the budget committee according to the minutes to 7 yes, 1 abstain, and 1 no.
Budget committee has conferred, and the chairman has notified me that it needs to reflect on the article, one article to be presented with the budget committee voted 7-1. So as I pointed out to the clerk, you as the, not to be overruled on this, but you as the voting body don't have the right to change how a certain group, be it the board of selectmen or the budget committee votes. It'd be like saying, you'd like to change every vote to show the board of selectmen vote 0-3 instead of 3-0. You don't have the right to do that. Only the board of selectmen do, or in this case, the budget committee. So the budget committee is clarified, and I have not recognized the motion that was brought to the floor while I was in the sidewalk. So, clear as mud. Eric.
Clear as mud in my name. Apparently, some people misunderstood what was being said. So to reiterate, it was the Board of Selectmen at a meeting a month or so ago voted to have the verbiage added to the petition warrant, which we had no right to do. So in transparency, if someone was to read the minutes, which I know there are people here who do that, and saw that, I wanted to make sure everyone was perfectly clear that the verbiage was illegal for us to even add. So that is why I made the statement that I did. We didn't vote.
And did you, looks like you want to make your comment?
I think most of the commutes, we didn't do it, should we have
The question of the misprinting of the budget committee recommendation brought up in a side conversation here the fact that the selectmen should have also printed their recommendation on this, and I'm sure they will by the time it gets to ballot.
Further discussion, comments, questions with respect to the body of Article 19? Right.
So I'd like to make a comment on this first. I want to disclose that I'm the planning board rep for the Board of Selectmen. I also am on the rec commission. So I just This has been my observation over the past years of this warrant article, where it seems to go back and forth. So I'm not speaking on behalf of any board or commission, just what I've seen go on. This warrant article has been submitted to the planning board as part of the capital improvement program for a couple of years. It has not passed as a recommendation from the planning board because the planning board had felt that they did not receive enough information or background to justify the $15,000. The planning board had asked to see how much money the boat ramp brings in each year, and they had never gotten a hard definite number on what that dollar value was. So they wanted more information and more data to make their decision. That was really the main reason why it failed each year. It was brought again to the planning board this year, and it did not pass. So this warrant article is exactly how it was presented to us, and it's exactly how it's worded. I just think that everybody should realize, if you read in the capital improvement program that the planning board put together and worked on for several months, it is not a recommendation for the capital improvement program. And this is just me speaking as a resident. You know, it's very clear this is not speaking for any board commission. This is my opinion. And we need to keep in mind when we're voting for this, we are charging for this program to be used, and if there is money that is put into a rec revolving account, and I think the residents should encourage the commission to look at the finances and plan a little bit better. So if you're taking in money for something, that should be funded. So you're asking for the residents to put money up and pay for this, and then when you want to use it, you're going to be charged again.
Les, did you want to recommend?
As a member of the rec commission, I support this. I don't know the reasoning behind the offer that wrote it. But there was a move afoot, there was some discussion that the town boat ramp at one point might be turned over to the state of New Hampshire. And that would be the worst possible thing that would ever happen. And I think this will give us the money to finish the boat ramp upgrades.
Thank you. Andy?
Good morning. Thanks for everybody coming out today. I actually am the petitioner that put this warrant article in, and I'm sorry for so much confusion here this morning. I think this warrant article took longer than number 3. But I think that, and I want to thank Selectman Hutchins for recommending or supporting this warrant article, which she states that the town beach is the pearl in the oyster shell. And I totally agree with her. And right now, unfortunately, the town boat ramp is in deplorable conditions. And I just think that if we can move forward with fixing the boat ramp, any boats that back in that boat ramp to go onto the 3 ponds is checked. And that is very important because we are fighting the NIAD. So I think that the town boat ramp is very, very important. So I'm asking you for your support to move forward with $15,000. The DPW director has looked at boat ramps up north that would fit perfectly in there. So we want to hope to get this fixed. If Karen Brown or Chris Jacobs, they're on the commission, the rec commission, if they want to speak to this, I encourage you. Thank you.
Mr. Wong.
Just one point. If the state takes this over, a grant has to be open 24/7, so therefore there'd be no monitoring. That is the reason why
we want the town to control.
I just want to make, hopefully everybody heard what Mr. Wong said. It's a very, very good point. And I just want to reiterate that if the state does take that boat ramp over, I know he just said it, but anybody at any hour will be able to back a boat into the three ponds and launch without any inspections being done. And I think that would be a huge detrimental to our lakes and for the beach. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to step down as moderator for a second, speaking as a resident. The idea was floated to turn this over to the state. My biggest concerns were that that area would be open 24/7. It would then be a policing issue for the town police, because they'd have to go down there and monitor the submarine races that would occur after midnight. They'd, you know, it's always been an attractive spot for after-hours activities, drinking, whatever. But having the gate there has always, you know, limited that or controlled it. It's correct that having it open 24 hours a day would allow everybody to use it in an uncontrolled manner. And one of my concerns was on a big weekend, I know we already have a police boat, and we've raised money in the past for new engines. Then policing the Milton Three Ponds would become a bigger burden for the town. There may or may not be assistance from the state. It's probably not may or may not be widely known, but I do work for the town of Hampton. I have to deal with the Hampton Beach State Park. It is a state park, open 24 hours a day. Do the state police patrol it? If they have people. Do they do it 24 hours a day? No. It falls on the town of Hampton. Town of Hampton expends upwards to $500,000 just on police details in a year to deal with the Hampton Beach State Park, the drinking, the all hours, and all the other things that come along with it. I think last year they even spent $40,000, Hampton did in ambulance runs, just that were unrepaid by for people at the state park. So it's a huge tax burden for the host community and the state's response is, well, you get it back in rooms and meals taxes. Hampton sends to the state $200 million a year in rooms and meals taxes. They get back just about $900,000. So they get 200% of that. The other response from the state is, well, you have the greater tax, it raises the tax values. I'm not sure that having 50 extra boats on Milton Three Ponds every weekend or every day would raise tax values as much as it would be a burden to the town. So that's the only reason why I was personally opposed to Fish and Game or any other state agency taking over what is one of our prime assets in the town. One of the guys that it benefits everyone, because it doesn't. I come back in as moderator. So I'm in support of that article, by the way. Let's get it done. Let's take the safety concern off the table. It would be much benefit for everybody. All the way. Further discussion, comments, questions with respect to Article 19. Mr. Brown.
I voted in favor of this particular article when it came to the Budget Committee. The discussion you've just heard is practically a classic example of switching the terms of discussion. The only way the state will take over that property is through an extensive and complicated political, long-term action of the town. The issue is the boat ramp itself, how it fits in the capital improvement plan, whether or not it has been properly funded by the Recreation Commission through revenues coming into the town, whether or not the design criteria of that boat ramp are in place, whether they have been vetted and by whom, what the time frame of construction is, what particular criteria we use to check boats coming in and out of the water. To start raising the flag of state intervention gets away from the fact that this is not part of the capital improvement program. It's not part of an orderly plan to have about $500,000 in additional funds come into the budget every year so you know what your costs are. If you read the last line, it does not say that this money will be taken from the unexpended fund balance. It is new taxation. In that, it is different from the three other articles. I support the program. I have spoken in favor of a carefully planned program. I have spoken in favor of having revenues carefully sourced in protection of the uses of that program. Have any of you taken on board?
Questions, comments, other consideration with respect to Article 19? Not seeing any. Amy Boucher has made the motion to close discussion of Article 19 and limit further reconsideration. Les Elders seconds that motion. All those in favor, please raise your ballots. Anyone opposed? Okay, we have closed further discussion of Article 19. And we have closed further reconsideration of that article today. All passed, the clerk will place Article 19 on the second session ballot as it is read. That's not an changing the budget response, not changing the article. This moment, this body does not have the clarification the clerk's asking. Is it really the motion is read or amended? Yes, the budget committee amended their response. Note that. Bruce.
Just a point of order on this. Will this also stand for the Board of Selectmen vote on whether to recommend or not?
I believe they said that they would.
Thanks.
But it's still, it's up to them to make it occur. This is going to the printers on Tuesday? On the board? Yeah. I mean, they're the ones that signed the warrant, so it's up to them to, if they want to add one more line of information.
I make a motion that the Board of Selectmen recommends.
I'll second it.
Great. Just want to have a quick discussion before we vote. All I'm going to say is I do support the program that's in place. However, I think that planning is key, and I'm going to take that into account for my vote. On that note, I will take roll call. All in favor?
Aye.
No.
This is kind of close.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Unless anyone feels otherwise, the board is voted 2-1 that they're in favor of this particular article, and we'll add that to how what is the posted warrant, and/or does anyone feel aggrieved by that process? Do you want to reopen? Just voted to close it at 19. But again, I would state that the board of selectmen have the authority to put how they feel about that article on the bottom of the article, as the legislature and Department of Revenue Administration give them the authority to do so. Okay? Is there any other business before we go today? Mr. Brown?
And that is to thank the moderator for his time and patience. Because I have tested his notes.
All right. You've been very easy today. I'm getting more mellow, you're getting more mellow. All right, not seeing any motion on any other activity, I'll accept the motion from the floor to adjourn. Mr. Long makes the motion to adjourn. It is a seconded by anyone. Myself, we are adjourned. Thank you. 11:52.